these patterns become woven into our nervous systems over time. And so helping people really look at that stuff and unpack it, and doing so from a somatic perspective can be really helpful because it bypasses language.
Hello and welcome to this live. It has been a beat since I have joined you live on this channel, and I'm so thrilled that on today's live, I'm going to be chatting with Lauren Charbonneau. She's going to be joining me here in a moment. It looks like she's just joined. And I'm thrilled to be having a conversation about the relationship between self-care and the nervous system, your nervous system, my nervous system. There is so much power to understand how it all works. And we're speaking with someone today. Lauren's background is in dealing with a lot of different situations in people's lives when it comes to life and stress. Not only that, but her own story. Lauren, welcome. I'm so thrilled.
Hi, Sheila.
It's been a while since I've seen you on Zoom.
I know.
This is a joy.
Hello. Hello.
We live in the land of the screens. And so what's beautiful about this conversation is how we're going to be talking about elements of that as well, because how do screens influence our nervous systems? How does tech influence our nervous systems? So Lauren, thrilled to have you. I would love, in the short time we have together, to be able to hear a little bit about your story, about the work that you're doing in the world. I love it so much. Like from the moment I open up your website and see you just kind of sitting there, it's beautiful, like with this couch scenario, it's really a beautiful environment. I feel a sense of ease. And actually, anytime I've seen you on screen, I feel a sense of ease. And I know that is something that didn't naturally come to you. You really went on a quest. So share with us, first of all, where you're located. Tell us about the journey of getting to where you are.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for having me. And you're right, that ease was not always just there readily available, but it's available to us all. So I want to just start by saying that. But my journey, I'm in Boston, so that's where I am in the world. So on the East Coast of the United States. And my story is that I had, I spent 10 years of my career in the public mental health system, very high stress job. And I was happy there. And then I had a baby. And I became a single mother when my child was still an infant in her first year of life. And then when she was about 6 months old, she developed, at the time, reactive airway disease, which, is the precursor to asthma for kids. And so I had a couple of years prior to having her, I had started a business, a side hustle, right, as an executive resume writer. And that was fun. And so here I was with this full-time job, this very sick child, and a side business. And my full-time job couldn't offer me the flexibility that I needed to be able to attend to my daughter's needs. And so I thought, you know what? Okay, I'm going to figure this out. I've got my business and I've got my baby, and I'm going to just, make this happen. And unfortunately, the amount of stress I was under and my lack of understanding of just what to do with that, right? Because we don't really have a good understanding of that. So I had really high blood pressure, and I was in the ER multiple times with, blood pressure that was in the territory where you could have a stroke. And what I found, which was really interesting to me, was that the only advice I was receiving was like, you need to change your circumstances. You can't be under this much stress. And I was like, true. And yet, like, I can't not work, and I can't not have a baby. And so it was like, what else do you have for me? And there really wasn't anything else on offer from the mainstream system. And so I went on a quest, like you said. I'm a pretty solution-oriented person, and I'm also just curious. I thought I can't be the only person who's kind of just stuck in a set of circumstances that's not quite right.
I so relate to you on that. The curiosity, it's like, woo, rabbit hole. But
So I
very
was
good.
like, okay. And this was a couple months before the pandemic. So the pandemic proved me right because it was like, no, well, now we're all stuck at home with our kids, right? And working and all of the overwhelm that goes with that. So I went on this quest, coaching, mindset work, spiritual practices, just whatever was out there. And there's a lot out there for entrepreneurs, right? I'm sure you know. If you name it, I probably tried some version of it. And what I found, I had this interesting experience that a lot of things would provide temporary relief, but they were it was almost like more work in the long term, right? It kind of felt like an uphill battle. Things would be helpful some days, but not other days. And then I started working with a health coach because I thought, I could probably eat better, right? So let me do that. And she was exploring somatics at the time. And I'm just so grateful that I was introduced to that in this sort of roundabout way. It wasn't like an official part of her offerings, but she pointed me in that direction. And what I found was that this was something where I would do these practices and I would feel better. I had a very immediate and very powerful experience of feeling a shift in my body and feeling a sense of relaxation, of greater ease. And yet what I found was that a lot of the things that I was exposed to were either kind of long and time consuming, right? It would be like an hour session or maybe a practice where you're like, so a lot of somatic stuff, you're like moving on the floor, you're making noise. And it was like, how would I use this in like what if I couldn't be on the floor and making noise, right? Like I got curious again, like, what are the principles behind this? Because I want to know, like, some days I can do that, but what about like when my baby is in the hospital? Like, what can I do then that still has the same impact? Is there something? And so that's what drove me to become a practitioner and really get training in these principles and understand how this stuff works, right? How the nervous system works, how these different techniques work, and how they can be used, and in some cases, sort of broken apart or shrunken down so that we can take them with us when life is challenging and when we maybe don't have access to our regular preferred daily menu of things we would like to do. So that's where I am now. And so the work that I do with people really is that it's, understanding your own nervous system's default responses and understanding how you can use knowledge of, the various nervous system states and how the stress cycle works. And you're creating your own personal menu of practices that you can draw on for whatever is challenging for you so that you can live, I have a lot. I still have a lot going on. I'm still a single parent. I now have two businesses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like,
funny how that happened.
Like my blood pressure is normal, right? This is my affect on most days. I'm calm. I'm, well fed. I'm well rested. And, certainly I'm still a human being and some days are more challenging than others, but there is capacity, right? There's capacity to move through all of it with a sense of ease, with purpose, with connection, and so that is what I really aim to bring to people. So that's been my journey.
That word capacity is something, there's just such a beautiful resonance to it because I think that's really what many people need, but they don't realize it's what they're looking for, right? It's not about just like going and sitting under a tree all day,
right,
and trying to just like live so simply that we don't have any stress. A little bit of stress is good. And our lives and what we are finding ourselves involved with on a daily basis, like going after your purpose, going after that thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, requires activity, requires action. And so the question is, how do we do what you say, going from chronically stressed to calm, by learning how to work with your nervous system? And I know you say you work with executives and entrepreneurs and those types of roles. Like as soon as I hear those words, executive, entrepreneur, you do kind of feel the word stress coming from behind there because you realize as an entrepreneur, it's always on. Your business is never closed. Even if you're sitting on a beach somewhere, it's still going on in your mind, right? If you have a team, they may still be working while you're relaxing and you're still the person who's holding it. And if you're an executive, same thing, like you're a cog in a very big organization that keeps going and has needs. So knowing that there is something simple that people can do and to tap into to really release that stress and be able to better handle it, because it's not like the stress is going to go away, as you mentioned.
Right.
That is so powerful. And it really feeds into what I've been talking about over the years with simplifying your wellness practice, you know, because it's true. Having a menu to pick is beautiful instead of having this cut in stone type of experience. You need to be checking off every box every day, because as you and I both know, when we look at our cyclical self-care, every day is different. Gosh, every few hours can be different, and maybe every week is different, every season is different. And so being able to pick from the menu that suits us at any given time is so powerful. And you know, I love how you say that once you started this nervous system work, you almost immediately felt calmer. Like it wasn't like it took you months and months.
Right.
And so talk to me about that. Like, what did it look like in practice, just to give people a piece of what that felt like and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the first step, and this is actually where I start with my clients too, because this was the most powerful beginning piece for me, was understanding how to break rest down into something small, right? Because we hear about like you need to sleep at night, and yes, you do, but you probably, if you're really overwhelmed, that's probably greatly impacted. You're probably not sleeping in an ideal way. Maybe you're going to bed. Maybe the only time you have to yourself is late at night and you're watching Netflix to try to feel like you have something for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a common thing for like moms I know. And so what specifically the practice of yoga nidra has been for me and for many of my clients has been a gift, because this is it's a guided meditation. So it's not, you don't do any yoga poses, you're laying down, but you are putting your body into a state that sort of mimics sleeping. So it's different from hypnosis or from other kinds of guided relaxation, in that you're relaxing, you know, the mind and the body in a very specific way that sends you into this sort of sleep-like state, but you're not actually sleeping. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you do a 20-minute session of yoga nidra can feel like you took a 2-hour nap. And so that was the beginning for me that kind of cracked open like, oh, wow, like there's actually a way to get some peace, to get some rest in a way that's really structured, that doesn't take a ton of time. And so what that turned into for me was, because my body could relax, you know, maybe at 2 p.m. when I'm doing the yoga nidra, it was then easier for my body to access a similar state of relaxation at bedtime, right? And it did lead to better sleep over time for me, right? So that's a wonderful way to begin, is with a practice, with that practice, or, you know.
Yes. And, you know, sleep,
Mm-hmm.
it's the foundation. I feel like sleep and hydration, those two things together, it gives our body the ability to do the stuff it needs to do, to repair, to protect, to restore.
Right.
And it gives our brains that ability to do the same, because our brain it's working so hard all day long, trying to, and the nervous system trying to just keep everything running on autopilot that we don't have to think about, and then add on top of it all of our other thoughts and our activities. It's wild. But I love the thought that the yoga nidra and this practice actually trains your body on what it feels like to rest. So when rest time actually comes, you're getting the full impact, instead of looking to, certainly we have things like I always love to say, we have little things that we can help people to use to just get over a hurdle, like a really good quality natural melatonin or something for a few days. But like, we don't want to become dependent on that kind of stuff. We want to be able to rely on our body. So it's nice to know there's some kind of herbs and tinctures and things we can do, but ultimately, even those things are not going to train your body to do what it needs to do. That's your nervous system's job. And I know it's been such a beautiful thing to follow and to learn about and to experience myself, and now to be able to teach to my clients and also to my family, like my teens. Right. And so I would love to hear, you know, how you managed to merge this experience into a practice, because then you, being the person you are, you're already certified in other things, and then you became a certified somatic stress release practitioner, the Embody Lab certified coach, and the academies ICF accredited. So for coaching, for all those things, you did that. Oh yeah, and you have another you have another Protagonist Career Solutions connection that you're involved in. So maybe tell me a little bit about those two things, just a snapshot of what each of those looks like.
Yeah, so that's so they're pretty separate, to be honest with you. So the resume writing business exists as it has, since 2018, and that really is just empowering people to, own their story, to tell it. In a way, I specialize in people with complicated transitions, right? So like the story isn't, maybe it's really complicated. Maybe they're making an unlikely leap. A lot of people who are doing unconventional things like downshifting later in their career, like an executive who doesn't want to do that anymore. And it's like, oh, that's kind of, maybe you don't hear about that every day. So those kinds of things. And so that is sort of in one bucket. And then I've got my wellness business, which is Well with Lauren, in the other. So that they remain pretty separate. And so in my wellness business, I run workshops, and I also have a group program where, I really take people on this journey through through a 3-step process. The first being what I just mentioned, breaking rest down into smaller pieces. And the second being understanding the stress cycle, right? That's what somatic stress release works with, is the stress response cycle. So understanding how that manifests in the body, how to complete that cycle, because that's where you see so much buildup of tension, is where we're starting the cycle because we encounter something stressful and then it doesn't complete. So learning that. And then also just reevaluating. There is often, and this is where the coaching really ties in, and those weave together, is that there are often patterns in our relationships with ourselves, with others, with the commitments that we've made, that are being often driven by things that we can't see, right? So the fact that I became, somebody who, had a baby and unfortunately didn't have enough support, and, was not attracting people into my life who were capable of showing up in a way that was supportive, right? Like some of that, you could blame that on circumstance, but when you dig a little deeper, there were some patterns that I was carrying around from childhood, from what was modeled for me as what was healthy, from, the role that I often played in my family, which was the person who could be like really understanding of difficult people or people who were having problems, right? Without regard for my own needs. And we bring this stuff with us, whether we like it or not. I mean, these patterns, they become woven into our nervous systems over time. Yeah. And so, helping people really look at that stuff and unpack it, and doing so from a somatic perspective can be really helpful because it bypasses language. Mm-hmm. So when we can really get a felt sense for like, oh, I'm going to receive the support of the surface I'm sitting on. And it's like, oh, that feels really difficult. Like, that was my experience in one of my earlier practices, was like, oh, so that kind of clues me into like why relationship, right? Feeling support in a relationship feels uncomfortable, like to my nervous system. And there's some capacity building that has to happen. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
So that's where the coaching and the somatic stress release kind of weave together for me.
That's so helpful. And, as you're mentioning that, the fact that it doesn't use a language, it's a feeling. And so it makes me remember, honestly, first thing in the morning, I love to do, when it's nice enough, I'm outside barefoot on the grass. When it's not nice enough right now, I'm like barefoot on my very bottom floor of my house on the cement, with my red light on in front of me, and I'm meditating, and I'm really just allowing things to flow in such a way that, my unconscious mind is just starting to wake up, right? Mm-hmm. And it's in those moments I get the most incredible downloads. And the guided things that I go through have me really mind some of these beliefs. Like, what's this thought that's coming up? What's stopping you? What's this thing, and why do you believe that? And so I'm actually looking at that, and then I get these hits about, oh, this would be a great idea. I should call this person. I love this direction for my life, or whatever. Like, answers to big questions maybe I didn't even know I had. And so I'd love to hear from you, like, what kind of pivotal shifts happen for you when you're lying in yoga nidra, when you're doing one of these somatic practices in even just a short amount of time? Like, what kind of revelations have come to you during those
Good
times?
question. So a lot of, for me, and I think I'll just start with like explaining, kind of how this comes about. So when we work with the stress cycle, the first stage is activation, right? We feel like something in our body, like, oh, I'm activated, right? Something is stressful. Maybe I feel some tension, right? Now, the second step is mobilization. We want to move that out of our body through some type of movement, right? So pushing on the wall, or maybe it's hitting a pillow. It's different for everybody in the moment, right? So after we've done that, like we've moved the activation out of our body, like that's where there's actually some space for us to go into deactivation and restoration, which are stages 3 and 4 of the cycle. And for me, that's where the shifts have come, right? Is where like I've moved out whatever was like here, taking up all the space, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm able to be more receptive to like, what is the feeling, right? Like what's going on. And so one of them was I was being guided through a practice in restoration of feeling the support, right? Of I think it was the floor or the chair or something. And that was very powerful, right? It was like, oh my God, this is why I keep complaining that people show up who are not able to be supportive, right? But how, like, I don't seem to be able to receive support even from a piece of wood. So
who knew?
Like, maybe that's on me. I don't know. You know what I mean? And what's interesting though was like that was, and then over time building that capacity, different people do show up now. Like the people who can't, and this has, been a couple of years in the making. I do click with a more stable and supportive type of person now. So that has been big. And then I feel like, it's not so much that I've had, I'm having trouble thinking of other powerful revelations within the practice. And what I experience more frequently is that because I do this, I do these practices, I kind of have the stress cycle as like a barometer for what's going on, even as I move through my day, right? It's more in the mundane moments I'm able to access, like, how does that feel in my body, right? Like, how does that feel? Oh, like, so it's not so much that big insights come at those, predefined times. It's more like as I'm just moving through life, I can pick up on more information from myself. I can hear what my body is telling me, what my intuition is telling me, right? And that's a lot of, I run a business, and so we make a lot of decisions on a daily basis. And so being able to reliably access in the moment, like, does this feel good to me or not? Or like the energy of the conversation I'm having, it doesn't feel great. I don't know why, but I'm going to honor that it doesn't feel great. And I'm going to maybe mull on that later, right? You know what I mean? That has been so powerful because it really allows me to make better decisions, to be able to plan my days in a way that feel good, plan my weeks in a way that feel good to me, that honors where my energy levels are. I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. I think I would still be using somebody else's checklist or just, whatever external things we think we need to do rather than using my own self as a compass, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I love it. And I love that you're guiding women and people everywhere to actually do this. Because I think this is the key. It is that honing of your intuition. Because I have found the same thing. It's just, you may have a hit, but then it sometimes doesn't land until later. It's like, oh, interesting. I had this question this morning, but now this answer has come. For me, the moving it out of the body is like I rebound every day. So I jump on the little trampoline, and there's something to that. And just the music and the release, like all of the things, all the elements. Yeah. And knowing though that you can access it at any time during the day is so incredibly powerful, because as you're coming up with, like, you don't know what's going to happen through the day. There's always going to be things that happen just out of the blue. And it's like, oh, how do I respond to this? So personally, what I've noticed is my capacity to be able to handle things and let them go, and not overanalyze, overthink, let it impact hours and hours of my day or a whole day. Right. It's like, okay, let me just feel this for a moment. Okay, doesn't feel good. Okay, I get to feel good anyway. I get to let it go, and I know the answer is going to come, even if it's a tough thing, right? So it's just building that for all of us, which is not like, it's learned. It's not inherent, because I don't think in our culture for generations we have had that kind of insight. I think it's been more like reactive. So, waiting, oh no, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen? But instead we can actually prepare ourselves on a daily basis and a moment by moment basis to be able to see, ooh, what cool things can come? Like, how can we find the capacity to be able to move beyond and to find solutions? Like, it gets us into that part of our brain as well, but it starts in the body. I love the work that you do. And I really look forward to talking more with you about these things and just sharing your work with my community more and more, because I feel like it is the missing piece, and you really landed on something amazing. So obviously people can follow you at well.with.lauren on Instagram, and your website is wellwithlauren.com. And I know there's something special on the website there as well. Why don't you talk about a way that they can connect with you there?
Yes. So there are actually two ways. So you can, I spoke about Yoga Nidra. I have a free Yoga Nidra download on my website. So if you want to go there, it's right at the top of the page, put your email in, you can get, it's 15 minutes. I made it short so that all you busy people can start with something short. That's the one I started with was 12 minutes. So I made it 15. But I also have a free workshop coming up next Thursday. So it's called the 3-Step Stress Reset. And it really digs deep into those 3 steps I was talking about earlier that I follow in my my work with folks. And so it'll be a deeper dive into, what those steps look like, a couple practices that you can take with you from the workshop. So you can access that and sign up at wellwithlauren.com/workshop. Or if you just go to the website, there's a link to the.
Fantastic. I am looking forward to it. It's on the 6th, right?
On the 9th, Thursday.
On the 9th, sorry. Ixnay on the 6th. It's the 9th of March. And we'll have this linked below in the comments, as well as, of course, certainly if you're listening to this and it's on the podcast, by the time it's on the podcast, this will have happened already, but you can still reach out to Lauren, and I'm sure she'll have more goodness in future months as well. But I'd love to be able to share this here so people can get the message now and then later, so they can get the information on how really they can start feeling good right now. It is accessible to all of us. Lauren, thank you so much for being here with me today. I so appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here. And thank you to everyone who joined us.
Yes. And for those of you who are watching or who are listening after the fact, please reach out to Lauren and tag her on Instagram, tag me on Instagram as well, and let us know, like, what landed for you. Do you already participate in these somatic releases with your nervous system? Do you have it down pat? Is it something you're exploring? Or is this like totally new to you and you want to follow along and see what will happen as you participate for yourself? I really look forward to hearing, and we will see you on another episode of the Connect with Sheila Botelho podcast. We will also see you on another live very soon. Thank you for being here, and have a beautiful day. Lauren, all the best to you, and I will chat with you soon.
You too. Thank you, Sheila.